Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of the Marriage Talk podcast. It is great to have you with us. Thank you for subscribing and sharing the link with other couples in your life who you know could use some input into the various challenges that we all face on this journey to happily ever aftering together. Bill Hobson here. Jay and Laura Laffoon are normally with me, but they're away this week. I'm happy to be joined by some very special guests. In a most unique field, I think we would talk about the context here, because not only are we talking about marriage, but we're talking about it in the context of families who have disabilities that are factored into with the raising of their children. The book is called How to Build a Thriving Marriage as You Care for Children with Disabilities. And Kristin and Todd Evans are here with us for the first time ever on Marriage Talk. So it's good to see you folks there in Nashville. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us on, Bill. We're excited about today and kind of sharing a little bit.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
so
thank you.
excited. I'm so excited to learn. And as I shared with you before we started recording, my wife and I have some very good friends who have a child with special needs, and we've been able to watch over the years just some of the various factors that brings into a family setting that other families may not have to face, and may not, they would consider it a blessing, but they may not be blessed with, right? So how
Mhm.
did the two of you come to contemplate this as the subject for a book? Let's start there.
Yeah, well, things have come full circle. We actually got married 22 years ago, starting out in ministry together. Went to grad school for ministry. We were in church ministry for about a decade. And then our daughter was born with a very severe, rare chromosomal deletion called Crete-Shaw syndrome. And she still has a lot of medical and developmental and intellectual disabilities. And when she was little bitty, after she came home from the NICU, our lives got flipped upside down.
Mhm.
We were just trying to survive. And that began our journey of one, trying to save our marriage, but two, now enjoying a thriving and joyful marriage today. And in the midst of all this, we had to make the very difficult decision to leave full-time ministry at that point to save our marriage and our family. And we both changed careers. I went back and got my master's in social work and became a licensed master social worker. So as we've come to a place now that we are in a thriving marriage and our family is very stable, we've decided, we've learned all this the hard way over the past, our daughter's 14 now. We stumbled, we suffered, we learned that's to put it mildly,
Yes.
learned the hard way, and just realized, what if we put what we learned through story, all the research, I'm a research nerd, about almost 200 professional research studies went into making sure this book is based on evidence. Put our ministry training experience all together and create this practical book that can help couples build the additional skills, marriage skills, that we didn't realize we needed.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that these kinds of marriages take special skills.
Well, you bring into this conversation the triple header of challenges, right? So you started with just the normal challenge of married life.
Mhm.
You add into the basket a marriage that also has full-time ministry as part of its equation. So that's challenging. Ask anybody who's been in ministry for a long time. And then, of course, even if your child wasn't disabled, just adding a child to that equation is a big change. But then you add on
Mhm.
top of it what you were describing. And I can see where you would face this issue of we've got to do something very different or we're not going to make it. How long
Mhm.
how long did it take you to determine that, just to realize that that we are in a spin cycle, and if we don't do something different, we're not going to make it?
Yeah, I would say it was really well into the second year after our daughter came home that when they first came home, it's like, okay, we've got to figure all this out. We got to do this. We're on top of it. We're um, very little sleep, but we can do this. And it just felt like every single day became kind of like Groundhog's Day, and it's like another day, and every day was focusing on our children and the needs and the finances, and our marriage just slowly dwindled and dwindled to where we stopped really talking on an intimate level and connecting, and it became just a daily check-in, and the marriage became hollow, and we were close to divorce, and um, finally it just got to the point and said, you know, we're not going to make it if we don't do something different. We're already in such terrible shape right now that we have to make some sort of radical change and look at this, or there's no way we're going to stay together as a couple and enjoy marriage and help our kids, and things are going to be worse. So that's kind of where we found ourselves.
Was there a moment, was there a light bulb moment where one of you realized that, or was it just sort of maybe somebody else's advice from outside saying, listen, you two, maybe it was a parent or a mentor or somebody. How did you flip that switch to realize it's time to change?
Yeah, I think we each had a little bit of our own light bulb moment. For me, I'm very logical. I'm an engineer. I need the facts and the data. So I looked at the data for the past year and a half, and said, okay, decreased marriage enjoyment, wife not happy. Just added up all those facts and said, okay, this isn't, our daughter's condition is not going to change, and we're gonna have to keep putting this in. And if it's not going to change, to try to keep doing what we're doing is not going to work. So that really hit me and kind of humbled me, and just really started seeking in prayer kind of what to do at that point. For me, that's kind of how it happened. And for you?
I would use the word crisis.
Okay.
You made it sound so mild. But, he's so analytical. He went back to school to be an engineer. I was emotionally drowning. I had trauma response from the pregnancy and the NICU. Our marriage was in crisis. Our family was in crisis. My mental health was in crisis. And it came to a point, like, Todd said, I didn't want to be with Todd anymore. I was hurt so badly emotionally and in our relationship. I couldn't keep going. And it was actually, my psychiatrist said to me, if you two do not get out of the house together and strengthen your marriage, it's not going to end well. The story is not going to end well. And so as him saying that, we had friends and family doing everything they desperately could to help us. But it came to that point of him saying to me, I haven't given up on us. I'm never going to leave you. And that kind of commitment to me, that recommitment, now knowing what our marriage vows actually meant, the for better, for worse, the richer, poorer, the sickness and health, it had a whole new real meaning. And for him to recommit like that, and even after a while we had done to each other, hurt each other, my mental health crisis, he wasn't going to leave me. And so that was the moment where we both said, okay, we don't know how we're going to do this, but we have to find a way.
Can you help me better understand how it gets to that point? And I'll put a little context on the question. I think a lot of people have seen the statistics that when families endure a trauma, a tragedy, sometimes the loss of a child, or a substantial accident or injury, or perhaps the raising of a child with disabilities, that the divorce rate is really, really high. But I'm not fully understanding how it gets to that point, because it seems like at the beginning it would be all hands on deck, right? Everything, we're going to do everything at all times to take care of our little one. Is it just then a matter of not having time or energy left for each other? Is that kind of the starting point of the trouble?
That's a big component of it for sure, because there isn't time for those things. If you let those kind of things in life happen, with the daily care needs and everything else, there isn't time, and you have to make it a priority. So it's easy to put the priority on the child. Here you are as mama and papa, and you've got to focus all your energy, you feel like, on your child, or they're going to die. I mean, literally. Yeah, they're on machines and all this. So it's like, I'm going to sacrifice everything for my child, and give that. And the byproduct of that is that the sacrifice that we ended up giving, and so many families do, is the sacrifice of the time with their spouse, of their commitment, of their energy, of their focus, because the focus is elsewhere. So you've got those pieces. I know from our perspectives, we had some other pieces too, the finances, all these additional therapies cost money, trying to work a full-time job, and struggling to have time to do well at it.
And I had to quit my job
Trying to
to be
balance
full time.
the stress of, and the quitting the job, so less finances coming in, and trying to juggle bills. I mean, lots of people are in the situation in their marriage early on, oftentimes, where you've got your bills and you say, this one's due, I can't pay it. Which one is going to have the least recourse? And that just builds stress on things. So it's all these factors that individually, I think marriages and things experience, but they're more intense, and they are cumulative, and they add up to the point that it's just all of a sudden you realize, I'm in quicksand. I'm I'm all the way down.
So
You make a good point. It accumulates. It's called cumulative stress. You've got those factors, and once you get that chronic stress on you, it begins to change your physical and mental makeup. It literally begins to rewire your brain in a different way, change the chemicals in your body. And when you get to that point, emotional connection and physical connection become less and less.
Yeah.
Because your body and brain are so overwhelmed just trying to survive the day.
So Todd, during those discovery moments when you were both learning how desperate this situation was becoming, were you at all surprised to hear from Kristin, yeah, dude, I'm about done with this?
No, she told me.
Okay.
I just
All right.
ignored it.
He just hadn't listened.
I didn't have. I'm gonna be honest.
You didn't. You didn't listen.
I couldn't deal with it. It was all I could do to take care. We kind of split roles a little bit, and she took care of the kids more on a daily basis, and I helped when I got home. But it was all I could do to manage the finances, manage the job, and try to do it. She would say, "You're not emotionally validating me," or "I need to go to counseling," or things like that. And I'm like, we don't have the money, we don't have the time. Suck it up. We can get through this. And that was the wrong response, as I learned and figured out. But
Well, but from a practical standpoint, you said you had the engineer's mind. From the practical standpoint, it wasn't feasible, it sounds like, from what you're describing, just from an income standpoint. And then from Kristin's standpoint, she's going, listen, I don't care what's feasible. Here's what's not feasible. I'm not going to keep putting up. So this is how those things keep snowballing, right? This is how the avalanche takes place. And all of a sudden you're just buried at the bottom of the mountain. So at some point you guys started to get a handle on all of it. I don't know you well enough to sit here and say, and they have perfected life and marriage, but you started to get a handle on it. So give some hope to our audience who's struggling in a very similar way, and take us through how you started to get a grip on what looked like it was going to be an out of control mess.
It was an out of control mess. And I think, people think about, oh, you have to do these big moments, these big changes. There does have to be that, like recommitting to one another. That was the first step, to say, we know what it's like now, but we're sticking in this together. Then looking back now in retrospect and reading the research, it was little things. It was learning these new skills of, we don't have time to talk because we have to triage. Okay, who's going to which therapy today? Bethany's got to go to the ER right now. So it was like, what time was there left to talk, about us? So we started it's not little, but it is simple. The skill of, we're going to have a 10-minute check-in today, every day, about how you're doing emotionally. So it was starting that skill. building that in. It was starting to learn stress management skills, coping skills together. It was finding a way to get out of the house for an hour together. So it was those little skills we started implementing, stumbling, back then to try and figure out, we went to marriage counseling. I went to individual counseling. We just began to get healthy.
Yeah, I think back to the kind of genesis of it, what you're asking there too. It was a point that you reach some point in your life where it's like, I can't do anything else. I kind of give up. And I'm not saying give up on the marriage. I'm saying I give up on me trying to make this happen and work. And so that was that point where I went to Kristin that we talked about a minute ago, and just said, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know how this can happen, but I know something has to change. And so we were there at the lake that night. We got away for a night, and just that's when I looked at her and just said, I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm committed to you. I'll never leave you. And I hope we can figure this out together. And so that then, I think that kind of started the point where we were able to kind of come to desperation and say, okay, we're willing to work on this, and then start those little things like Kristin was saying. And then that was really a 4 or 5 year journey. So we want to give hope that you can get there, but it's not easy. It takes work, it takes time, and commitment to get to, but it gets better a little bit every time you make an intentional choice to do something.
Yeah, and you have a really good framework in your book, How to Build a Thriving Marriage, as you care for children with disabilities, and just some points that, like you said, you're not going to get them overnight, but what if you could start building towards them? And it's interesting, when we do marriage talk, when we have the normal conversations, I say normal, but the usual conversations, they apply basically to everybody who's married.
Mhm.
This conversation has a smaller audience, right? But it's a super important portion of the audience because they feel like they might be forgotten, not just by church in general, not just by their neighborhood in general, but maybe even by their extended family who don't always realize how much it would mean just to say, I'm going to come over for an hour or 2 hours. You guys go get dinner and don't worry about a thing. So you can probably find yourself feeling like nobody sees our need. Nobody
Mhm.
understands it except they stop by on Thanksgiving with a pie and they say, how's it going? And then they're gone 2 hours later. So as part of what you talk about here in building that framework for getting yourself back to healthy, I'd love to hear from you how family can help play into that as well, and maybe how it happened in your life.
Yeah, we're incredibly blessed to have my parents and Todd's dad that have helped. They came over as much as they possibly could. They were working full time, and we lived a couple hours apart. Um, and that helped take some of the stress off of the parenting and the caregiving, and we would be able to get out of the house for a couple hours. That probably helped us survive. And a lot of special needs parents aren't that blessed to have family members, like you said, who understand or who even agree that their child has a disability or has autism. And so members of the church, we think, often are kind of scared to say something or scared to offer to help. And especially these parents, we don't like to accept help or ask for help because we feel like a burden. But like you said, that was exactly it. If somebody offers to come sit with your child, even while, we're at home, and say, hey, go eat dinner on the porch. If something happens, I'll come get you. Bring dinner for the kids. And so we can just, sit on the porch for an hour and relax and talk. That is a tremendous gift.
And so we had a church, just our family, we had a church family that really came around and supported us through some of this time and did those things for us, brought meals just to help relieve that little bit of stress, that accumulates. Just having meals ready and prepared in the fridge, would help us to have that few extra minutes to take care of something with the kids, or to be able to have that 10 minutes to sit and talk. So those were huge.
Yeah, and I think also spiritual support, because as disability parents, we go through a lot of grief. We go through a lot of questioning, spiritual struggles. At one point, how could God be good and allow our daughter to suffer like this and our family go through this? So I think, and a lot of times, special needs parents, we think kind of hide in shame from that and won't really share that with people at church or the pastors. So I think spiritual support is a big one too. And just saying, hey, how are you guys doing? How can we help support your marriage? I think just specifically asking the couple or the parent, is there a specific way we can help you?
Mm.
Yeah.
I like that. Now let's walk through some of the guideposts that are in your book. You encourage couples to identify their unique needs. What do you mean by that?
Well, our situations are unique and complex,
Mhm.
and every marriage goes in with different communication needs, literally different practical needs for their kids. And so there's not a cookie cutter formula for, okay, you need to increase your communication. This is more an assessment of areas that maybe they're handling well, they're communicating well, they've gotten into a rhythm, but maybe they're not coping with stress so well. So in the very beginning of the book, we have this assessment for couples to look and see, okay, which area are we struggling in the most?
Mm.
Let's flip to that chapter on how to
Communicate better.
communicate better, which is a big part of marriage, and it's in every marriage book, but it's very different for these couples. And so there's some practical ways to get through those conversations about triaging your kids' needs so you can get to this more intimate conversation. So it's assessing which areas are we really needing the most help with, like a guidebook, like a survival manual.
Yeah, like for instance, for an example of a unique need, as Kristin, she had to just very blatantly say, I need you to listen to me and emotionally support me and validate me. And um, she would coach me through sometimes how to say, and it started off as rote, is, hi, Kristin, how are you doing? And I had to work on that.
Reading
But
the
as I
3x5 card as you're doing it.
right, but I truly meant it and was trying to reach out because I knew that was a need she had. And I got better at it, and it wasn't rote anymore. It's not rote anymore now, and I ask, but she knew I cared and knew I wanted to, but I didn't understand completely her need. But she was willing to share it with me, and tell me what that was. So that's one example.
Yeah, well, understanding just a little sliver, just based on experiences with our good friends, how overwhelming the nonstop care needs can be. I totally understand how it could swallow up somebody's individual needs. I get it because you're pouring everything you have into the care and of your child. All of a sudden there's an emergency surgery or there's a late night run to the hospital because this has just happened again. And after not very long, I would think exhaustion, irritation, probably some anger, all of those things get thrown into the cauldron because it disrupted everything else you had planned. And I love your encouragement in the book to tackle problems as a team, as opposed to saying, you got this, pointing, they call this the corporate salute with one finger pointing each way because it's always somebody else's responsibility. Let's talk about tackling problems as a team, whether it's a specific immediate need or the larger scale picture.
Mhm. Well, there's two components to that. There is a team aspect to it that so much of it happens with. There is some individual pieces that we found that are important too. So we each have a specialty, kind of so to speak. She knows all the medical terms, all of that. She takes the lead and does those. I come to appointments as much as I can, try to support in that way, but she's tackling those researching the things like that. for me, I tackle the bills, all that. I take that stress off of her and do that, because I'm good with finances and money and balancing it all. So we each have our individual pieces, but there's definitely a team component that is huge, that for any married couple, I think, you can gain from it. So what that looks like is, probably the classic one that happens every single day is bedtime. Our daughter is 14, but she is developmentally, I think she's up to around 3 now.
Ish.
Yeah, 2 to 3. So it's a full bedtime routine, just like you would have with any child.
Plus medical.
And then we have to add in the medical and things. So that's something we've kind of just agreed to, not a formal agreement, but we do that together every night. So that we are there, we are helping each other. We're, I'm maybe in the kitchen doing medicines while she's helping put pajamas and toileting and things like that. And then I'm coming in and doing the medicines, but we're seeing each other, we're interacting, we're both focusing on that together at the same time. And I can't tell you just how much joy that brings, and just knowing we're doing it together, and that we're in this part together and we're helping each other out. And sometimes we sing little make-up songs about the day. Our daughter loves that, like any 2-year-old does. But that togetherness of coming together, getting that done. And then we literally, sometimes we have other stuff to do around the house, but then we literally head for bed to kind of settle down for the night, try to watch a show when we have time, if there is some time. But we, as part of that teamwork, we don't go to bed until both of us do. And that's kind of our meet collapse, and just be there together. So that togetherness and that teamwork, that kind of carries you through the tougher times of the day, knowing we have that time at night that we're going to do this together. So that's one component of it for sure.
Yeah, that's
I
really
think
cool.
there's also the complex problems that these couples face. We've got not just we're trying to make ends meet and get the kids to school. It's I've got to get this child to this therapy, this child to this. But at the same time, this other thing's going on, and we need another, I don't have a car to do that. And there's these complex problems that these couples face that take creative solutions. And so brainstorming together, working together to solve this seemingly impossible dilemma that might come up on a daily basis, or bigger dilemmas of we're driving, this is an example, we're driving 4 hours both ways to take the kids to appointments, and we can't keep doing this. And so bigger picture, do we try to move to be closer to services? So just tackling those really complex problems together.
Let's tackle one more before we kind of run low on time. There's several, by the way. We could talk about the advice and the experiences in this book for a long, long time. It's really meaty, and congratulations to you guys and thank you for pouring yourselves into it to the degree that you have. Find ways to rest and recharge. I would have to think that is the top of the sacrificed list for couples that are dealing with a disabled child is just sheer exhaustion. How do you find these ways to rest and recharge?
It is so important, yet one of the hardest things to do. Yeah, I think it's starting to take those little moments. We don't have a lot of time. We don't have big chunks of time. Those are very important too, but taking even 10 minutes, either individually or together, to go for a walk, or to sit and do deep breathing or read a scripture passage. It's finding moments throughout the day to read a book for 5 minutes or something you enjoy. Those add up. Those really add up. And then finding those bigger times. It can take a lot of work to get childcare and everything together, but it just takes determination to find a way to do it.
And sacrifice.
It does take sacrifice.
So, for instance, I come home from work some days, and she's busy on fixing the meal and whatever child issues might be going on and things like that. And she might see, I'm stressed, and she'll say, "Honey, go for a run. I've got this under control." And she may not really have it under control. She may just be saying that.
I don't usually.
But she will sacrifice, that, it's even 15 minutes to get out and do a little bit. Just it recharges and resets me a lot, so I can come back and do that. Or another way, with my company I run, there's parts of it that I was able to take our daughter with. It's a lot of extra work to pack her bag, pack all the supplies, pack boluses, pack everything to take her with me. But when she was younger, I would do that to help Kristin to have the time for herself to get whatever she needed to get done, to have some recharging time, things like that. So it's a lot of individual sacrifice for the other person. And I think that's something any couple can benefit from and do, is just, how do you help your spouse find a way to recharge and find better ways to enjoy life? Because when you do that, the mutual feeling of that, you did this for me, that warms my heart, and it's kind of a building thing, that snowballing thing back and forth, that just can really improve your marriage a lot. So that's one thing we would challenge any couple to do, is how can you sacrifice for your spouse to have 15 minutes, to have a little bit more time to invest in themselves, because it will come back and invest in your marriage.
And a rested, happier spouse is a happier marriage relationship, healthier.
Yeah, and that's true all the way through, regardless of the composition of your family. Nobody's good
Right.
when they're tired and exhausted, and we're just not at our best. I can't thank you enough on behalf of families who are struggling through these things. Thank you for putting in the research, the time, and a lot of effort to put a book together. This doesn't just, you don't just do this by Googling how to write a book. I mean, you are just hammering at it for weeks and weeks and months and several rounds of editing and all those things, all for the purpose of helping other families. So we have put a link to the book in the podcast notes. Whether you're watching us on our YouTube channel or listening to us in audio form, just go down to the notes and you'll see a link for how to build a thriving marriage as you care for children with disabilities, written by Kristin and Todd Evans. And we'll be praying for your family, for your little girl, and for the two of you as you kind of continue on this journey. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, Bill, for having us.
Yep, and we think there's nuggets in there for any of your audience and couples that they can pull out of it. But also, we want to challenge them, get the book and give it to someone that's struggling with that, because those families don't have time to go out and find a resource. Bless someone else and give them a copy of the book.
Yeah, well said. Thanks so much, folks.
Thanks, Bill.
You.